For over a century, the government taxed people based on how many windows their houses possessed. This led to the phrase daylight robbery, as people were literally robbed of the sun by the law. To understand windows, we must go back to a time when they were just holes in the wall. In the year 1300, a window was not a sheet of glass, but a daily gamble with cold. The Old Norse term was windeye, an opening that let the weather in just as much as light. Without a chimney, the fire filled the room with smoke that could only escape through these holes. Outside, the sun was blazing, but inside, you could barely see your own hands in the dark. The darkness was not just an evening event. It was the constant reality of the human home. To keep out the winter, you had to plug the hole with a plank, choosing warmth over sight. This was the brutal bargain every household made for thousands of years. Light or shelter, never both. Desperate for light, people began reaching for anything that could cover the hole while letting sun through. When paper became more common, it was also soaked in oil to act as a primitive window. If you had a little money, you used thin animal skin, scraped and treated until it became parchment. It worked better than cloth, but it eventually went brittle, yellowed, and tore under the weather. These organic solutions required constant replacement, a never-ending battle against the elements and decay.
In many parts of Europe, the more durable answer was cattle horn, boiled until it softened.
It was split and pressed into thin, amber-colored sheets that were surprisingly tough and translucent. This is where the word lanthorn comes from, a lantern with sides made of cow horn. For centuries, looking through a boiled cow was a respectable way to see the world. But long before the medieval peasant, the Romans had already mastered the secret of glass. Their engineers figured out how to cast glass into panes, holding back the cold with clarity. They installed it in their grandest buildings and used it to warm their famous public baths. When Vesuvius erupted, it buried this technology, preserving the proof of their advanced civilization underground. When the empire fell, almost everything they knew about glass went into the ground with them. For 1,000 years, the clear window vanished from everyday life across most of Western Europe. By the late medieval period, glass returned, but only as an incredibly expensive status symbol. It was treated as furniture, a possession so valuable it was often written into wills. The Industrial Revolution brought crown glass, made by spinning a bubble into a flat disc. For 1,000 years, the clear window vanished from everyday life across most of Western Europe. Today we find them charming, but back then, they were the cheap scraps for the poor. As glass became more common, the government saw an easy way to measure wealth. The window tax was born, a law that punished people for wanting light and air. Families chose to live in darkness rather than pay for the privilege of the sun. By floating glass on molten tin, it formed a perfectly flat, clear sheet on its own. This process finally made clear glass cheap, abundant, and completely invisible to our eyes. We take it for granted now, staring through a miracle 100 times a day.
The window is a quiet victory, the end of a 1,000-year war for light. So next time you look outside, remember the struggle it took to let the world in. Every piece of history is etched into the very way we build our homes today.
Light is life, and the window is our most essential connection to the world beyond.
From wind eyes to glass towers, our journey toward transparency has defined our civilization. We have finally conquered the dark, one pane of glass at a time.
This is the story of the window, the invisible hero of the human home. Cathedrals were the only places where glass truly flourished during the Dark Ages.
These windows were books of light for a population that could not read. To a peasant, walking into a cathedral felt like stepping straight into heaven itself. Builders used new tricks like the flying buttress to cut enormous holes for glass. The church was the only institution wealthy enough to keep glassmakers in business. Divine light was believed to lift the soul closer to the Creator through color. Places like Sainte-Chapelle pushed the idea of the glass box to its absolute limit. At sunset, the whole building turns into a glowing jewel of human ingenuity. Our modern skyscrapers are the direct descendants of these ancient cathedrals of light.
We still crave the same connection to the sky that the ancients did.
In the Roman world, glass was almost normal for a wealthy family to own.
They made cups, jars, and bowls at a scale that wouldn't be matched again.
Glass workshops were spread across many provinces, linked by vast trade routes.
Glass blowing changed everything, allowing glass to be made fast and in volume.
It went from rare treasure to an ordinary household object in a few centuries.
The system that made glass affordable was enormous and humming with activity. But the Western Roman Empire came apart, and the trade networks broke. Cities shrank, and the specialized workshops needed for glass simply vanished. The knowledge to make window glass was lost to the common man. Humanity fell back into the gloom for nearly a millennium. By the 1500s, glass was back, but it was still a rare luxury. A single pane of glass could cost as much as a small house. It was so precious that it was moved like a piece of jewelry. Nobles didn't leave their glass behind when they traveled between estates. Windows were heirlooms, passed down from generation to generation like gold. The quest to make glass bigger and cheaper was finally gaining momentum. They learned to blow glass into cylinders, then slice them open to flatten. This allowed for larger panes, but the quality was still uneven.
Grinding and polishing was the only way to get a truly flat surface. It was slow and incredibly expensive, reserved only for the very rich.
Most people still lived with distorted views through cheap bullseye panes.
The bullseye was the mark of the blowpipe, a leftover scrap from better glass. It gave a sense of light, but you couldn't really see through it. The window tax continued to haunt every homeowner in the country. All upper floors went dark as landlords sealed windows to avoid the tax.
Experts observed that the new policies were creating significant hardships and health challenges within the crowded urban quarters.
Finally, in 1851, the law was repealed, and the light returned. People celebrated by reopening their windows and letting the sun back in. The same year, the Crystal Palace showed the world the future of glass. It was a cathedral of windows, built from over 300,000 panes. But the real revolution was still a century away, in a quiet lab. Pilkington's float process allowed glass to form itself perfectly on tin. Gravity and surface tension did the work that once took days of grinding.
Suddenly, clear glass could be mass-produced at an infinite scale.
The resource became so accessible that its presence was eventually taken for granted.
The invisible miracle now surrounds us in every building we enter.
We have finally achieved the dream of the ancient wind-eye, light without weather.
The journey from a hole in the wall to a glass tower is complete.
We are a civilization that lives behind glass, and we are finally in the light.
Remember the 1,000-year struggle every time you look through your window.